Let me tell you about Ujunwa. She lived in a village where life was hard, especially for her. From the moment she was born, her life was marked by a stigma that stemmed from her mother, Nkoleka. Not that Ujunwa had done anything wrong, but the people in the village loved to point fingers and make assumptions. The other children, for instance, didn't want to play with her. It was always the same. They laughed at her, ignored her, and treated her as if she were someone different, someone they needed to avoid. Of course, this hurt Ujunwa deeply, but she learned to deal with it in a way that perhaps only those who've experienced such pain can understand. Ujunwa lived with her grandmother, Nene, because her mother, Nkoleka, had disappeared a long time ago. With all the love in the world, Nene cared for Ujunwa the best she could, though what she could offer was a simple and modest home. What she gave instead was wisdom. You have to be stronger than you seem, my child. The world won't give you anything for free. What you carry inside you is what will save you. As the years went by, Ujunwa became more reserved, though not cold. She learned to hold in her feelings and to keep her kindness alive, even when everything around her seemed to suggest she didn't deserve it. It was almost as if kindness was the only thing she could control amidst all the pain, and somehow that kept her going. The village children, for the most part, didn't understand Ujunwa or what she went through. To them, she would always be the daughter of that strange woman, leaving no room for her to be anything more. And yet, she never stopped being kind. Perhaps that's what bothered them the most, how someone so ostracized could maintain such a pure heart. Nene, on the other hand, understood that Ujunwa's kindness was a powerful strength. Don't let them shape you, she would say, with that wise gaze only someone who's lived a long life can have. You will grow, you will find your place. But above all, remember, being kind is a choice only you can make. Ujunwa, amidst all this, held on to hope. Even without friends or many smiles, she believed there was something greater waiting for her beyond the pain and rejection. She just needed to keep believing. And so, day after day, she got up, carrying the weight of prejudice and loneliness. But unlike many who might have given up, Ujunwa refused to let herself break. She didn't know it yet, but life was about to offer her something that could change everything. Ujunwa's life, which until then had been marked by loneliness and the ridicule of the village, began to change the day a new family moved in. They were wealthy, from a distant city, and everyone in the village was curious to meet the newcomers. But what caught Ujunwa's attention the most was the couple's daughter, Izine. Izine was different from the other children. While the other girls in the village usually ignored or mocked Ujunwa, Izine looked at her with genuine interest. She didn't seem to care what others thought, and that made Ujunwa feel, well, important, perhaps for the first time in her life. Izine didn't treat her as the daughter of the strange woman. She saw Ujunwa as a person, and that made all the difference. At first, Ujunwa was cautious. After so many years of rejection, it was hard to believe that someone could genuinely want her friendship. But Izine, with her kind and open demeanor, didn't give up. She started talking to Ujunwa every day, inviting her to play, to take long walks around the village, and even to have lunch at her house, which was much more comfortable than Ujunwa's. At first, Ujunwa felt out of place. It was difficult to accept so much kindness and attention after years of being overlooked. But gradually, she began to open up. They became inseparable friends. Izine brought a new light into Ujunwa's life, like a ray of sunshine breaking through the dark clouds that had always hovered over her. During one of their walks, Izine talked about life in the big city, about the wonderful places she had visited, and about her dreams for the future. Ujunwa, on the other hand, didn't know how to respond. She didn't have dreams like Izine. Her world had always been small, constrained by poverty and prejudice. "Have you ever thought about what you want for your future, Ujunwa?" Izine asked as they walked along the dirt road leading to the village square. Ujunwa stopped for a moment, looking at the ground. She had never had the time or the luxury to think about the future. All she knew was that she had to keep moving, keep fighting against the daily hardships. "I don't know. I've never thought about it," she said softly, Azina smiled warmly. Don't worry, you'll figure it out. Everyone has a destiny. Sometimes we just need a little push to find the way. Ujunwa smiled back, touched by Azina's words. Their friendship was simple but profound, and Ujunwa felt that, in some way, she had found an ally. Azina was someone fortunate, with a life full of possibilities. Ujunwa, on the other hand, felt her life was bound by a difficult past, a legacy of rejection. But at the same time, she knew something was starting to change. Over time, Ujunwa and Azini's friendship deepened. They shared secrets, laughter, and even dreams. Ujunwa began to realize that with Azini by her side, the pain of rejection no longer weighed as heavily. She no longer felt so invisible. Azine was not just Ujunwa's first true friend, but also the key to something she couldn't yet understand. Their friendship wasn't just a refuge from the pain Ujunwa had endured. It was a sign that perhaps, at last, she was beginning to find her place in the world. What Ujunwa didn't know, however, was that Azini's friendship would bring something else into her life, something she had never imagined, the interest of Aka Olisa. Time passed, and the friendship between Ujunwa and Azine continued to flourish. It was a true friendship, something Ujunwa had never imagined she would have. Azine treated her with such care and respect that Ujunwa began to feel a sense of trust she had never known before. But something else was happening, something Ujunwa didn't expect. Aka Olisa, Azine's young and charming brother, started looking at her in a different way. Aka Olisa was a handsome young man with deep eyes and a gentle smile. He had a way of treating people with respect and care, and whenever he spoke to Ujunwa, she felt a peace she couldn't explain. At first, Ujunwa didn't notice. After all, she was used to being ignored by the boys in the village or being the target of mockery. She never imagined that someone like Aka Olisa could take an interest in her. But gradually, Aka Olisa began to draw closer. He was always around when Ujunwa was with Azine, always smiling at her, offering help, and, most importantly, listening to her in a way no one else ever had. He seemed to see something in her that others didn't, and this made Ujunwa feel special, in a way she never had before. One afternoon, as they walked along the trail near the village, Aka Olisa, with his usual calm demeanor, stopped and looked at Ujunwa with seriousness in his eyes. "Ujunwa," he began, "there's something about you that draws me in. It's not just your kindness, but the strength you carry within you. I admire that, and I want to be by your side." Surprised and slightly nervous, Ujunwa looked at him. I don't understand. Why would someone like you, so respected and good, be interested in someone like me?" Aka Olisa smiled softly. "Because I see in you a person who deserves to be happy. And more than that, I see a woman with the courage to be herself, no matter what the world says. That makes me want to be a part of your life." Ujunwa felt her heart beat faster, but she also felt a growing fear. She knew how difficult her past had been, how the weight of rejection still lingered over her. But as she looked into Aka Olisa's eyes, she felt something she had never felt before. The chance to be loved and accepted, simply as she was. In the days that followed, Aka Olisa continued to show kindness to Ujunwa, and their friendship deepened. They began to talk about everything: dreams, struggles, and what they hoped for in life. Aka Olisa showed her that the past didn't matter. What truly mattered was what they could build together. Then, on a quiet night under a starlit sky, Aka Olisa did something Ujunwa never imagined would happen to her. He led her to an open field where the stars seemed closer and knelt before her. "Ujunwa," he said, his voice steady but full of emotion. "It doesn't matter what people say. I know you have a pure heart and I love you. I want you to be my wife so we can face everything together. Will you marry me?" Ujunwa looked at him, her eyes filled with tears. The proposal was so simple yet so full of love and sincerity that she couldn't contain her emotion. She had never imagined that someone like Aka Olisa would see her this way. And there, in the silent field under the vastness of the stars, she finally felt seen, loved, and accepted. "Yes," Ujunwa replied, her voice trembling with happiness. "I accept." Aka Olisa's proposal was not just a moment of happiness for Ujunwa. It was also a symbol of breaking free from the stigma that had always haunted her. Finally, she felt worthy of love and respect, and she knew that with Aka Olisa by her side, she could overcome any adversity. And so, the wedding of Ujunwa and Aka Olisa was marked by a simplicity that reflected the true essence of what they shared: love, respect, and a promise to face the future together. This joyful moment marked the beginning of a new chapter in Ujunwa's life, a chapter where she no longer saw herself as the rejected one, but as a loved woman, with a future full of possibilities by her side. Ujunwa's life seemed to finally be on a path of happiness. Married to Aka Olisa, she had found love and acceptance. The joy she felt with the arrival of her first child was something she never imagined she would experience. Yet, amid this happiness, something heavy and distressing was unfolding in the village. In recent years, a growing concern loomed over the women of the community. None of them could conceive. Many had tried, but all failed. This caused increasing despair, as without children, the village's future seemed uncertain, and the fear of the king's lineage dying out was a constant worry. But, to everyone's surprise, Ujunwa, the woman who had always been seen as the most unlikely, had already become pregnant 3 times. Her pregnancies did not go unnoticed. On the contrary, they were the subject of murmurs and curious glances. Many women in the village began to see Ujunwa as a kind of hope, a possibility for change in what seemed impossible: fertility and the continuity of life. To the king, who despaired over his inability to secure an heir, Ujunwa's pregnancies became an obsession. The news of Ujunwa's 3rd pregnancy was a relief to many, but also brought a burden far greater than she ever imagined carrying. The king, feeling increasingly pressured by his inability to ensure the continuity of his lineage, began to see Ujunwa as a solution to his own problems. The fact that she had conceived so many times while other women struggled with infertility made him believe she was the key to saving his family. But to the king, it wasn't just about Ujunwa being fertile. He wanted her to conceive his child. As time passed, the pressure on Ujunwa mounted. The king, desperate for a legitimate heir, sent his emissaries to Aka Olisa with a grave and threatening proposition. He wanted Ujunwa to spend one night with him. That night, according to the king, would secure the future of the village with a legitimate heir and a perpetuated lineage. The request, not only immoral but also an extreme violation of Ujunwa's dignity, profoundly shocked Aka Olisa. He immediately refused and, with anger and determination, promised to protect his wife at all costs. However, for Ujunwa, the king's proposal was a harder blow than she had anticipated. It didn't matter that she had already faced rejection from so many or endured so much prejudice. Now, her body was being treated as nothing more than a tool to fulfill the desires of a king. Ujunwa felt indignant, but also powerless. How could she fight against the power of a king who seemed to control everything and everyone? How could she maintain her dignity in the face of such a humiliating demand? But despite all the fear and anguish consuming her, she knew she could not give in. Not for herself, but for Aka Olisa, for her child, and for everything she had fought so hard to achieve. The pressure was immense, and the growing tension made the atmosphere unbearable. But something within Ujunwa also began to strengthen. She knew that even though she was being forced to face a cruel reality, she was not alone. Aka Olisa loved her and stood by her side. More importantly, she knew she had the inner strength to resist anything. It was difficult, but Ujunwa remembered the words of her grandmother Nene, who always told her, "You are stronger than you think." Ujunwa's strength was undeniable, and she knew that even under pressure she would not let the king dictate the course of her life. She had the power to choose, and that was something no one, not even the king, could take away from her. The tension in the village had reached its peak. Women remained unable to conceive, and the absence of heirs in the king's lineage fueled growing despair. Ujunwa, who had miraculously conceived 3 times, was regarded with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Many believed she possessed something extraordinary, though no one understood why. The mystery was about to be revealed in the most unexpected way. The coronation ceremony to declare Ujunwa queen had begun, orchestrated by the king, who saw her as a way to control the narrative surrounding his rule. Yet, as the crown was about to be placed on Ujunwa's head, the ceremony was interrupted by a mysterious man. His presence was commanding, and he seemed to carry a truth no one else dared speak. The man walked to the center of the grand hall and, with a voice filled with authority, declared, "This village is cursed, and the key to breaking that curse stands before you all." The hall fell into an intense silence, with everyone waiting anxiously for the stranger's next words. He continued, "Many years ago, a pregnant woman was thrown into the river, a victim of her neighbor's cruelty and her own family's betrayal. That act of violence cursed this land with a terrible punishment, the infertility of its women and the looming extinction of the king's lineage. But there is something you do not know. That woman was not carrying just one child." All eyes turned to Ujunwa, and the man revealed a truth that would alter everything. The woman thrown into the river was Nkoleka, Ujunwa's mother. She was carrying twins that tragic day. One child was lost, swept away by the waters, but the other survived in her womb and was born. That child is Ujunwa. Shock rippled through the hall. The villagers could barely process what they had heard. Ujunwa, who had borne the weight of rejection and disdain for so long, now stood at the center of a revelation that changed her story forever. Because she survived the river and the cruelty that triggered this curse, the man explained, Ujunwa is immune to it. She carries the strength of being born from tragedy without bearing the guilt of those who committed the injustice. And more than that, she is the only one who can lift the curse because she is living proof that life can triumph over hate. The stranger's words echoed in the hearts of everyone present. The long-buried truth had finally surfaced, shining like a ray of light through the dark cloud that had hung over the village for generations. The king, stunned and unsure of how to react, gazed at Ujunwa with a mix of disbelief and newfound respect. He had seen her as a mere means to solve his problems, but now he realized she was so much more. Ujunwa wasn't just a fertile woman in a barren village. She was a symbol of redemption and renewal. Ujunwa, too, was overwhelmed with emotions. The pain of learning what her mother had endured mingled with the realization that her destiny was far greater than she had ever imagined. The responsibility of breaking the curse was enormous, but she felt a newfound sense of purpose. She wasn't alone. Aka Olisa was by her side, and she had been strengthened by every trial she had faced. The coronation resumed, but now it carried a profound new meaning. When the crown was placed on Ujunwa's head, she wasn't just a queen. She was the woman destined to heal her land. The village's fate now rested in her hands, and she was prepared to face it. With her courage, resilience, and the truth finally unveiled, Ujunwa stood ready to embark on the arduous journey of breaking the curse that had plagued her people for so long. The path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but for the first time she felt that she was exactly where she was, meant to be, at the heart of a story of redemption and hope. With the truth finally revealed, Ujunwa knew her journey was just beginning. The mysterious man who had interrupted the ceremony handed her an ancestral amulet, an artifact tied to her mother's story and the curse that had plagued the village. He explained that in order to break the curse, Ujunwa would need to return to the river where her mother had been thrown and perform a ritual of reconciliation between the past and the present. News of the revelation spread throughout the village, and Ujunwa became a symbol of hope. While some still doubted, most believed she was the one who could free the land from infertility. Aka Olisa, as always, stood by her side, offering his unwavering support and love. On the night of the ritual, under the light of a full moon, Ujunwa made her way to the river accompanied by Aka Olisa, the mysterious man, and a group of village elders. When they arrived at the river, the sound of the water seemed to whisper ancient stories, as if nature itself recognized the significance of this moment. Ujunwa approached the riverbank, holding the amulet firmly. The mysterious man instructed her to dip the artifact into the water and recite words of forgiveness and renewal. With her heart racing, Ujunwa knelt, feeling the cold water on her hands, and began to chant the sacred words. As she spoke the ritual, a change took place in the environment. The river, once calm, began to glow, emitting a golden light that illuminated the night. The waters rose gently, enveloping Ujunwa in a sense of warmth and embrace. It was as if the spirit of her mother, Nkoleka, was there, blessing and guiding her. When the ritual ended, a profound silence settled over the night, followed by the soft sound of children's laughter. It was as though the river itself was announcing the breaking of the curse. The elders, moved to tears, confirmed that they felt the energy of the land renew, and the mysterious man, with a calm smile, said, "The cycle is complete. The village is free." In the following months, changes began to take place. The women of the village, once unable to conceive, began to bring joyful news. Ujunwa, now not only a queen but also the guardian of hope, was honored by all as the savior of the free village. Under her leadership, the community flourished, and the painful past of injustice and suffering was finally left behind. Ujunwa and Akaolisa, in turn, saw their family grow amidst joy and prosperity. Their children were raised with the knowledge that true strength lies in facing challenges with courage, even when everything seems lost. Thus, Ujunwa became more than a symbol of redemption. She became a living legend, whose name would be told for generations as the woman who turned tragedy into hope and ensured the future of her land. And finally, alongside Akaolisa and her people, Ujunwa lived a long, full, and purposeful life as the queen who brought peace and fertility to the village.